Today, now I have the pleasure to talk a little bit about the future of banking in the IT era. And I will talk today with three banking specialists, with Michał Bolesławski from ING Bank Śląski, Piotr Marciniak, BGŻ BNP Paribas, and Michał Stępień from UBS Poland. Hello and welcome.
Hello.
Please have a seat. And a warm welcome, please. Come on. Thank you. Okay, first of all, I would like to say a controversial thesis. And I don't know if you agree. I hope not. So we'll have a first discussion. My thesis is that around 2030, we as consumers will not know in which bank our money is. Everything will go on a mobile phone. We'll use a Facebook payment app or an Apple payment app, and we'll receive our money from our entrepreneur, from our company, and we'll pay everything from our app. And Facebook, Amazon, or Apple, whatsoever, the big techs will contact banks. So banks will retreat from direct connection with the client, so there won't be any B2C connections, and there will be some kind of back offices in the banking sector. They will lose the race to be in direct contact with the client because they are not the first to be the most usable providers of applications for mobile phones. What do you think about that? Do you think that banks can surprise us and win the race with Facebook and offering fintech solutions? Okay, a smile, so you agree.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a tempting vision because actually many people is perceiving the role of the bank as an invisible institution in the future. So basically that it's facilitating simply the interactions with some shops or with some providers of services. However, it's not that much in front of the eyesight, and you cannot spot it actually. So in a sense, I agree. 2030 you mentioned, so it's actually quite distant.
12 years.
And in the future, but 12 years, it's not that much. It's a lot in terms of the changes in technologies which are happening right now. So I would say that it's something that can happen, and I wouldn't say that this is something wrong, because it doesn't mean that the brand of the bank has to be visible on all the branches or in the shops or somewhere else. It can be a provider of the services which is in the backbone of the economy or which is in the backbone of the trade. I wouldn't say that there is a loss of the direct touch, because this direct touch will happen through the data which are collected and the data which are processed. So basically the only thing which is important from our perspective is to be able to be in the position in which you are possessing the data. Because if you will be just the provider of certain things from the, like you mentioned, back office perspective, then this is the dead end. And then the banks will go towards the direction that there will be no actually space for movement.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, of course.
Maybe just to add one or two comments on that. First of all, let's say, generally agree with the statement, but first I would say that, as it was mentioned by Michał already, let's say we understand that this is the way going forward, we meaning the banks, so it means that we know that this challenge is ahead of us and we have to do whatever we can to actually secure, to be the one interface that will be with the client. Second of all, first we simplify the discussion to the retail clients, and I think we should stay there. But also we are trying and simplifying the discussion to talk about the simple part of the banking, which is for example, payments. In payments, I agree fully that that the way forward is simplification, and whatever we will do, the client will tend to make it as and look for the solutions which make it as easy as possible. When I go to the shop and take something into my basket, I already made a purchasing decision, but also a payment decision, and that should be facilitated, let's say, behind my additional actions. However, banking is also about the very important part of our lives, like taking a mortgage decision, for some of clients who made this customer journey, those are the decisions that are actually driving the next 20, 30, 40 years of their life. So I think in that aspect, I don't believe that we will become as an industry invisible. There will be people, no matter how the technology will go forward, that will look for advisory, that would like to know what is the best option for mortgage, what should be their investment plan for planning their retirement, and so on and so forth. And there is a role for different banks, definitely, but the banks that are still close to the client, that are more advisors, that understand the context of the client interactions with them, so the data that was already mentioned. So it's not so 0-1 kind of a setup from my perspective.
So banks will focus more on B2B relationships, or no?
Not necessarily. So what you refer to, it's more to me wealth management and advisory. So the kind of consumer will go digital. Yeah, retail will go digital, payments will go digital, but banking will remain a human business because it's the relationship, the trust between the banker and the client. How you to get the proper advice. So the digital world will help you to understand the risks, understand the big data, but then it will be the banker to help you to navigate through that risks and invest wisely.
Have you seen Sophia here in the conference?
Yes.
Yeah. Don't you imagine that Sophia can come to you and say, I'm your business advisor now. I know how to manage your wealth. And then a fintech company says, okay, we put those Sophias to many customers, wealth of customers, and again, cut off banks from direct contact with customers.
First, I think that Sophia will probably not come in a physical form. Why should she, right? I think it's enough that she will try to contact you in a chat way or in an email or via different digital way. Second of all, I agree that, and it's not a quote from myself, but the quote that I like, that digitalization can be a way to actually scale up private banking, meaning that give a private banking to the mass client. And this, from my perspective, is true. And the question is why should, from me, it's a task that banks should take as their task, and we should not wait for fintechs to do it. We should try to do it. And I think many of us are on this path.
I would like to add on Sophia, because I think that Sophia, with this way of speaking and presenting herself as you were copying her language, of course in 2018, will not be able to replace the human interaction, but 2030, as you mentioned, then they will improve her simply and she will be much better. And the moment in time and she will be able to pass this test of Turing, and you will be not able to recognize whether you talk with the AI or you talk with the human being, then I think we can imagine this. Yes. She can be in the cloud, she can be sitting here, whatever, but it's like if you don't know that it's a human.
In the banking sector, I think it's even more difficult to tell a robot from a human because all the words that they are using are very difficult. So.
No, thanks.
No, but it will be a luxury. So of course, then we know that the market is tough. Yes, so everybody is looking at the cost, and the margins are very thin, especially in the banking after financial crisis. So it will be how the banks position themselves. So those who really pursue the consumer banking, they will be competing with the consumer retailers like Ant Financial from Alibaba, and those who will position themselves that yes, we see the value, and rich clients, I hopefully will see the value of interacting with the human and getting the more advice which is based on solid data, and that's true. But then still interaction, they will be willing to pay a premium for that, because then every bank will have its own Sophia, and the Sophia will be the same. Yeah, because and then that will be the differentiation, that will be the competitive advantage for the banks to me. So still, I would not really waive the human factor in banking.
Okay, and how to reach that goal? So how to get there? Do banks need their own sandboxes, their own VC or private equity funds to invest in such kind of startups that develop this or not? Because otherwise, I think they will lose the race, because everyone knows that, and in the future, such kind of artificial intelligence is the way to deal with customers. So do banks need, and if yes, how? To invest in startups, in fintechs?
I think I would like to make one assumption about the Polish banking sector. So first of all, and we talked about this also in here, is that in Poland it's a bit different situation in Western Europe because there's such a high level of competition between the banks that the fintechs itself did not emerge in such a scale that in other countries, contrary to what I heard in some other places. I believe that the banks assumed to a certain extent this kind of role a couple of years ago, and that's why it's very much more difficult for fintechs to arise, to grow. And when we want to invest in fintech technology, and this is something attractive to us, I talk about this financial institution, we search for the solutions which we want to get from the perspective of the client's needs. So it cannot be a random investment in some kind of a nice idea of face recognition or some kind of a fancy thing that everybody likes, but it has to get to monetization moment at certain point of time, and it only happens when you satisfy given need of the client. And the third thing that I would like to say is that, for instance, from an institution that I'm working for, so for ING, we are organizing in Poland next week boot camp of ING Group, which will be organized in Kraków, basically in Alvernia, which is next door in this little space city, which is next to the highway. And there will be a global bootcamp of the ING Group. So that means that when we search for solutions, we have the paths and ways to do it through the accelerators, through the innovation labs, through all kinds of initiatives. And then we gather people together from around the world. And either we search and find it internally, or we buy it through the fintechs which are delivering, but not necessarily only Polish ones.
Okay. Do you have in mind any example of a global solution? For example, from ING that is applied in Poland?
We bought a company in Czech Republic which is called Twista. It is a deferred payment provider. And ING Group bought globally 140 companies in many markets, from Hong Kong to Australia. And honestly speaking, none of them became like a global solution at this point of time, but maybe one of them will be getting to this kind of weight.
And asking, is it possible that a Polish company having connections with a local bank or a global bank and its local branch will go global? Because Microsoft, for example, is helping Polish companies that are developing AIs to reach clients in other countries through the Microsoft network. Is it the same in banking? Do you see such kind of perspectives here in Poland that the Polish fintech can go global through your banks?
Definitely, this is already happening in our group, for example. First, I would say, I would like to answer the question from before by saying that at least in our group, in BGŻ BNP, but also what I see in other banks, we are humble to the setup, meaning that we understand that that fintechs are there and are a great source of innovation for us. It's true that banks in Poland have started to be very innovative by themselves, right? Many of them are software house with ability to scale up also on this on their platforms, and those projects are happening globally. But looking at the whole ecosystem, we are humble enough to admit that we have to, and we do look around for within the ecosystems that we work. The beauty of working globally is also that we can scout locally and share globally. In Poland, we have run hackathons, and Polish companies that won the local competitions are being implemented in Poland, and in the same time had a chance to being proposed in other countries. Locally, we are setting up the ecosystem with fintechs. On the global level, we also invest in some fintechs and startups that are being then spread around the world. So all of this is actually happening, and is a part of making sure that this journey that is more or less clear for all of us when it comes to the darket setup is a part of our group's journey.
And how is it in UBS?
UBS is slightly different strategy. So of course we see Poland as a great pool of talent, very talented people, a lot of people in the information technology, data scientists, and we tap into that. However, UBS is building its own projects based on new fintech approach, so blockchain, AI, or data science. And the Polish teams contribute to the global project. So we are not necessarily looking for the startups in fintech in Poland to give them the platform. We rather partner with big companies, with other banks, to leverage the technology like blockchain, Ethereum, for instance, we use to address the MiFID II, the legal entity identifier,
That's right.
and all the information shared across the banks on the market with regulators. So this is one of the pools, and Polish teams support that. And I believe it's Poland is in this spot where we have really great people, but when it comes to really monetizing, as you said, on the idea of building a proper fintech, then we lack on the capital. And that's where we need to bridge the gap. So great people with not so much capital. And then when we see that some Polish startups, they go to London to really get the capital to push themselves up to the higher level. And that's, I believe, from the Polish perspective. From UBS perspective, really work here, but deploy global projects and contribute to that global projects.
Okay, that's very interesting, because if you read global news, Financial Times or other newspapers, you see that there is globally a conflict between banks, big techs, fintechs. And here, as I listen to you, and also what I hear from other bank representatives, we have some kind of, union of banks and fintechs in Poland. The bankings are supporting them. Why is it so that we go hand in hand? Does the fintechs do not have financing outside of the banking industry in Poland?
No, but I think cohabitation and the cooperation is much easier than the war, because in the war both sides are losing, and this is much better for us to cooperate and to be inspired with certain things that we do not invent and we cannot predict and we cannot understand, because we represent pretty large institutions, and even if this is a bank or non-bank, this is much more difficult to undertake a startup solution or to start something new for the large, solid and traditional institution than for the little one that is not having any kind of legacy in place. But I would like to add to this what the guys mentioned about this evolution. And I think the startup way to go forward in Europe would be through the cooperation with one of those type of institutions, any other type of institutions which is sizable, which has equity to invest, and which is able to guarantee that this is going to be delivered in many countries, in many geographies at the same time. Because currently, growing startups, there's a lot of them in Poland, but personally, I'm not aware of any of those which is successful in multiple geographics multinationally, except like some of them which are established abroad by the Polish immigrants, like, I don't know, Klarna, which is hard to say that this is a Polish startup. Yeah. But it's something that was done by somebody which was grown on its own. But the dream of Klarna, it's one out of million to be materializing, finding a niche. We can facilitate this and we can help through the entire Europe, because we have much more ability to do it, resources.
Yes, then it's very important also to notice one thing. I think that the trend that you were describing, it's not only Polish, right? First, clients don't look so much for the single functionality or a single solution.
That's right.
In order to simplify, they are looking for the solution that is bundling, let's say, the financial world, right? And as many fintechs are providing the solution that is great as a function, but in the larger scale. Second of all, it's great to have an idea, but it's not so easy to find 1 million client, right? And
you can help.
And many, yes, and we can help. And many of the fintechs that have been trying to create own brands, which is a tough thing to do, especially on the innovative mature markets, have found out that white labeling is not so bad at the end, right? From the other aspects, it's also not so easy way to start cooperating together. It's sometimes a David Goliath kind of a setup where we have also a lot of things to do to make sure that we will not destroy the most important and valuable aspects of the fintechs that we are trying to cooperate with.
Yeah.
We have legal departments that are probably larger in size than the fintechs team themselves, right? So in our bank we have done a lot of work also to prepare our organization, procurement, legal, IT, etc., to make sure that we are able to invite and cooperate in an easy way with fintechs. Piotr Widacki will be talking about it in I think a few minutes on the other stage. So this is also a very important aspect of this ecosystem, that it's not only fintechs that want and we that want to do it, but creating the rules of this engagement that is really benefiting both sides.
Okay. We have in the panel name the statement, "Can banks surprise us?" So yesterday, I was talking here on the very stage with Minister Kwieciński about financing of seeds and startups, and he promised 5 billion zlotys for those initiatives. And then I asked him, okay, but what next? A company goes through this seed startup phase whatsoever, and then what next? And he answers, okay, we'll try to help to find them business angels. And here is my question, can banks surprise us and be business angels and start equity financing instead of debt financing of such kind of fintechs in Poland? Or globally even?
It's happening. So it's not can banks, and then can they avoid doing that? Yeah, because that's the new market. So to me, the question should be, and then there's a different pace for different banks, obviously. But UBS, for instance, it's really a global financial institution operating in global markets. It's much easier for UBS to be also a business angel or venture capital to support fintech startups, also in the very selfish interest to gain from that. So that's happening. So I see that really as a symbiosis between the fintechs and
as I listen to you,
banks.
you rather would like to just buy those fintechs and incorporate it into the bank structure than be a business angel and, let's say, keep it away from the banking system. Isn't that right?
Not necessarily. I think we don't need to incorporate. Sometimes we can incorporate something, sometimes we can keep it aside, sometimes we can even sell it after years. ING Group was the owner of PayPal, for instance, of 15%, and sold this many years ago before it became important. So actually that was a wrong decision, but there are sometimes right decisions which are showing that the only way for the banks in Poland at least, or somewhere else, is to be kind of a angel, which you mentioned, because the creditworthiness of these entities, it's not existing. So actually we cannot finance them even if we want through the loans, because usually they're loss-making for a couple of years, or at least at the beginning. So I think that the only way is to support them through this kind of acquisition of some kind of smaller stakes. I don't say that we are interested only in buying the whole thing and swallowing this and digesting. Quite opposite. The investment in Twista, which we made in Czech Republic, we bought only 20%, and we don't have ambition to go farther beyond that.
But then it's a bit different, because then we help our clients to identify good investment. Yeah, if it's not for us, then we help our client, because our clients want to earn the money with us, and that will be this advice where we take our margin on. Okay, that's a good startup. Invest in that. Yeah,
that's very interesting, because I heard something totally different from one of the CEOs of a Polish-owned bank recently in Katowice. So great that you have such kind of a perspective of equity financing of new fintechs and join the whole thing. Okay, so then can banks surprise us in the end? Do you have an ace in your sleeve?
If you are discussing that the trend is to become invisible for clients, I think that the surprise can only be for us, right? Because to be honest, we have to admit that when it comes to banking, we are not the automotive industry when we can create emotions. I think banks create emotions probably in the negative way when something doesn't work, but when it comes to this positive emotions like buying a new Porsche, it's probably not something that we here will achieve. So from the perspective of our industry, I think those changes will happen, and then I think they will not be a surprise, because we already anticipate in this transformation that is happening. But from the perspective of clients, this is probably answering to the needs that they have, and I don't know if they will, and I don't they will consider it a life changer experience and a surprise that they will tweet on or tweet on or put on the Facebook.
Okay,
so to me, just to wrap this up, I would add also not only the banks, but can regulators surprise us? Because we are heavily regulated.
Every
and
day,
we need
I
to follow the
think
regulation,
every day,
you know,
really.
so that's the trick. Yeah,
Okay, but that's a totally different discussion. Our time's up. We'll discuss the regulators and their role in the whole fintech revolution on another panel. And now, fingers crossed for generating positive emotions from the banking industry. Thank you guys for having you here and talking.